when you're born, you have a couple of interesting things happen. One is that the human infant is pretty much at this point believed to be born about 3 months early. And the reason for this is because our brains have grown so much as humans have evolved that the head is too big to actually stay in the womb longer to be able to actually pass through the birth canal. So therefore, babies are born after 9 months when probably they should stay in for 12 months to be fully developed. And so the first 3 months of an infant's life, one of the things that's a distinction that goes on is that their vision is very, very, very short-sighted. In fact, for about the first 6 weeks, they can't see more than about 6 inches away in focus. And if you think about it, this was logically because the only thing they ever need to be able to see is to be able to latch on for breastfeeding. And after about 6 weeks, there's a thing that begins to happen in an infant where for the first time they begin to actually look out into the world and they'll recognize a face, or they'll begin to hear a voice that's familiar to them. And their attention will suddenly be captured and caught, and they'll look out. And you know, as a parent, the first time getting a smile, they all of a sudden go from being just total primate to the beginnings of a human being. Because I'm absolutely convinced that we're all born as just primates with slightly different bodies. This whole thing about going to the loo, as you say, this is a learned practice. You understand this? Some of you have been around little babies. Do they stop and think before?
No, definitely.
Right?
I've been looking after one, definitely. He sort of just goes.
You go wherever. Right? There's no self-consciousness about this stuff. And
no, he's sitting on my lap and then I just feel something warm.
yep, that's exactly it. And you get this, that all these like civilized kinds of things, you know, what sounds and smells to put out into the world, and which ones you keep private, that kind of stuff, is all stuff you learn later on because you're just born. It's just bodily functions to keep you alive. And the human brain, at the very core of the human brain, this brainstem that we have, its purpose is keep us alive. So it's just hardwired instinctual things that make your eyes blink and your lungs expand and contract, your heart beat. You don't have to think about these things. Imagine what it would be like if you actually had to think about breathing. Like, okay, time to exhale. I think I should breathe again. We'd be stuck. Be endlessly in this Zen meditative state, and we'd all drop dead because we'd never get any food in our bodies. You understand this? It's just hardwired in to keep the species alive. So at the very earliest stages, the infant knows these instinctive things to do. Latch on. Figures out who is safe and who's unsafe. That's one of the next things that comes along. Who are the protective caregivers and who are the strangers that begin to show up. So as they begin to move into about 6 months old, there's a whole other thing that starts to happen. They start to notice that they can move their own fingers. At first they just look and there's this odd thing happening and it's interesting. And then they realize, oh, that's my hand. And so they can actually reach out and start to touch things. And then around 6, 8 months old, they'll start getting up on their knees and wanting to crawl. And they don't think about this stuff, it just happens. The next thing you know, this little baby is beginning to move itself around the room. I remember when I had my first child, I was talking about this stage with a friend of mine who had kids a little bit older than mine. He says, watch out, when they begin to crawl, it's on. Right? Julia's nodding her head over here. I mean, at that point, you have to keep everything off the floor, right? You have to watch out for all the light sockets and all that, you know, the electrical sockets and that kind of stuff, because they just go, whatever is interesting. And that's how they're wired. It's like whatever is interesting. The instinct is to move and to start this progression towards being able to stand up and to follow what's fascinating, follow curiosities, follow things that sparkle. Look at things that are colorful, that are different. So one of the things we often joke about when you have a young child is go out and buy them a really nice gift and wrap it in beautiful wrapping paper, put a ribbon on top. They tear open the wrapping paper, they open the box, they get the gift out, they look at the gift for about 60 seconds, and then they want to play with the ribbon. Isn't this right? And they want to play with the box. There isn't any consideration of, wow, I mean, that was probably a $50 gift that they just bought for me right there, and I really should go act like I like it, even though I think it's really dull and I already have one just like it. It's just whatever's fun. All that other stuff, that social consciousness, comes in later when you get into this different part of your brain. You begin to really develop the cerebral cortex. But that doesn't happen until a little bit older. So, around a year, the beginnings of some language begins to happen. Start noticing mama, dada, that kind of stuff. Very distinctly, somebody will walk in the room, they'll have names for it. And you all went through this in your life.